How are you guys doing? Today is Monday, November 30th, 2020, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to take you through this weekend's college football, college basketball, pro football, and international soccer matchups. And also there was a fight. There were a few fights over this weekend, and I'm going to take you through it all. And right now, I'm just going to get started, go straight into the fight. Over the weekend, Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr., two of history's greatest boxers, faced off. There were a couple fights before then, one of them being a fight between Jake Paul, the YouTuber, and Nate Robinson, the former NBA player. Jake Paul knocked out Nate Robinson in the second round, and that's probably going to be, I'm not going to speak more into this, but it's probably going to be looked back on as probably the biggest fight of the year, the most memorable fight, as a lot of hype behind it, and it was a very interesting fight. I mean, I was very surprised, and I enjoyed it beginning to end, especially the Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. fight, which ended in a draw. But I think Mike Tyson really dominated that fight. But of course, these are two of the greatest fighters in the world, and you really can't have it end with one guy winning that, even though Tyson won it. But of course, great performance from all from that night, and it was amazing. But really quickly, jumping right back into what's been going on this weekend, I'm going to start with college basketball right before I get completely into football. What's going on with that? Because this is the first weekend since college basketball has been back, and starting with what's been going on Friday. First ranked Gonzaga was able to beat unranked Auburn 90-67, as Drew Timme was able to score 28 points and 10 rebounds to help Gonzaga get their second win of the season. Also, San Francisco was able to beat fourth ranked Virginia 61-60. Virginia now 1-1 following that loss. Jamari Bouye would finish with 19 points and 6 assists, as San Francisco, of course, able to get a big win over one of the best college basketball teams in the nation right now. Big upset this early in the season. Fifth ranked Iowa was able to beat unranked Southern. Luka Garza scored 49 points. Big win for him, or big win for Iowa, especially big game for Luka Garza. Sixth ranked Kansas was able to be unranked St. Joe's 30-18. Seventh ranked Wisconsin was able to beat Arkansas Pine Bluff 92-58 behind Micah Potter's 19 points. Ayo Donsumu was able to help eighth ranked Illinois beat unranked Ohio as Dosunmu, sorry if I butchered your name. He finished with 27 points, 7 rebounds, and 8 assists on the night. 14th ranked Texas Tech was able to beat unranked Sam Houston State 84-52. Mac McClung, former high school phenom who went to Georgetown, he ended up finishing with 18 points on the day. 15th ranked West Virginia was able to beat unranked Western Kentucky 70-64. 17th ranked Houston was able to beat Boise State 68-58 as they jump to 2-0. UCLA was able to beat Pepperdine to get their first win of the season. 22nd ranked UCLA. Chris Smith led the way with 26 points and 12 rebounds against Colby Ross's 33 points for Pepperdine. And then also 24th ranked Rutgers was able to beat Farley Dickinson 96-75. Ron Harper Jr. leading the way for Rutgers in that win. Jumping into Saturday's matchups, starting off with second-ranked Baylor beating the unranked Louisiana Raging Cajuns. Davion Mitchell was able to lead the way for Baylor with 18 points of his own. Also, third-ranked Villanova picked up their first loss of the season as they lost to unranked Virginia Tech 81-73. Colin Gillespie leading the way for Villanova, and Keve Aloma with 23 points and 8 rebounds leading the way for Virginia Tech, helping them get their second win of the season as they won in overtime this one. And ninth-ranked Duke, my Duke, ended up beating Coppin State 81-71. Jalen Johnson for Duke had 19 points and 19 rebounds as he dropped 8 for 8 from the field. And then also DJ Stewart would finish with 24 points, which is the fourth most by any Duke freshman in their Duke debut. Big game for both of them. And then last but not least for that game, 13th ranked Michigan State was able to beat unranked Notre Dame 80-70 as Michigan State now is 2-0 on the season, Notre Dame 0-1. Michigan State, Aaron Henry led the way as he had 14 points and 8 rebounds, and Prentice Hub had 23 points for Notre Dame, but it just wasn't enough. Looking into yesterday's college basketball games, Baylor was able to beat Washington 86-52, Jared Butler leading the way with 20 points of his own. 10th ranked Kentucky lost to unranked Richmond 76-64, a 12-point win for Richmond. Grant Golden led the way for them as Brandon Boston Jr. led Kentucky with 20 points and 10 rebounds. 11th ranked Creighton was able to beat unranked North Dakota State 69-58 as Christian Bishop finished with 16 points. So with to help Creighton get their first win of the season. 17th ranked Houston was able to be 14th ranked Texas Tech in the first ranked showdown in a while. Dejan Jarreau for Houston finished with 8 points and 9 rebounds. They kind of shared the love this game. Big win for Houston. They're now 3-0 on the season as Texas Tech falls to 2-1. 18th ranked Arizona State was able to be Houston Baptist 100-77. Marvin Bagley from Duke's younger brother, finished with 21 points on the day to help Arizona State get their second win of the season. Also, 23rd ranked Ohio State was able to beat UMass Lowell 74-64. Dwayne Washington led the way for Ohio State with 21 points of his own. 24th ranked Rutgers was able to beat Hofstra 70-56. Ron Harper Jr. for Rutgers was able to get 15 points and 9 rebounds of his own as Rutgers jumps to 3-0 on the season. They're 3-0 at home as well. And last but not least, 25th ranked Michigan was able to beat unranked Oakland 81-71 at home. They jump out to 2-0. As I think they already have more wins in their football. I won't get into that one. But Isaiah Livers finished with 22 points for Michigan, and Jalen Moore finished with 21 points for Oakland. That's what's been going on with college basketball. Jumping right into college football, just to show you what's been going on in this 13th week of college football. Starting with the top ranked games from Friday. So second ranked Notre Dame was able to be 19th ranked North Carolina 31-17. Ian Book for Notre Dame was able to throw for 279 yards and a touchdown. On the ground, Kyron Williams had 124 yards on 23 carries and 2 touchdowns. Javonte Williams, North Carolina's amazing running back, has only held to 28 yards. And as Notre Dame's Fighting Irish's rush defense has been quite amazing this year. Big win for Notre Dame as they jumped down to 9-0 on the season. They have the best record in the ACC so far. Also, 13th ranked Iowa State was able to beat 17th ranked Texas in Austin. They beat them 23-20 after coming back from being down 20-13 at the end of the third quarter. Brock Purdy led the way for Iowa State, throwing for 312 yards and a touchdown. Breece Hall had 91 yards on the ground. And let's see. 15th ranked Oregon lost to their in-state rivals, unranked Oregon State, 41-38. As this was yet another game where Oregon State was able to come from behind and beat Oregon. Oregon was up 31-19 at the end of the third quarter. Oregon State able to come back, scoring 22 points in the second half, basically to help win this game. Tristan Gebbia throwing for 263 yards. Jamar Jefferson, their running back, finished with 226 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. Big win for Oregon State. They are now 2-2 on the season as Oregon is now 3-1 following this loss. Continuing on down the line, showing you what's been going on this week. Going on to the Friday's last game, 24th ranked Iowa was able to beat Nebraska 26-20, scoring the only touchdown in the fourth quarter to help Iowa go up and actually beat Nebraska. Iowa is now 4-2 on the season as Nebraska is now 1-4. Jumping to Saturday's big games, starting with just going down the list in terms of rankings, going through ESPN. First ranked Alabama was able to beat their in-state rival, the Auburn Tigers, in the Iron Bowl, 42-13. Mac Jones, the quarterback for Alabama, was able to throw for 302 yards and 5 touchdowns. Najee Harris had 96 yards on the ground. Devontae Smith had 171 yards in the air. Big win for Alabama. They are now 8-0 this far. Third ranked Clemson was able to beat unranked Pittsburgh, 52-17. Trevor Lawrence coming back. He finished with 403 yards and 2 touchdowns. As another elite performance from one of college football's elite quarterbacks. Fifth ranked Texas A&M was able to beat LSU 20-7 as they jumped down to 6-1. LSU now dropping to 3-4. Sixth ranked Florida was able to beat unranked Kentucky 34-10 as they jumped to 7-1 as they are trailing Texas A&M and Alabama in the SEC, but they have the best record in the SEC East. 8th-ranked Northwestern lost in Lansing to Michigan State, 29-20. That was their first loss of the season. And as Michigan State now 2-3, still unranked on the season. 9th-ranked UGA was able to beat South Carolina in South Carolina, 45-16. Of course, big win for Georgia. Of course, James Cook leading the way on the ground with 104 yards and 2 touchdowns on 6 carries. 12th-ranked Indiana was able to beat unranked Maryland 27-11. Tagovailoa threw for 241 yards from Maryland. It just wasn't enough. Tim Baldwin Jr. able to lead the way, and just it's a lot of great overall play for them as they were able to score 20 points in the second half, just to kind of put this game out of reach. 20th ranked Coastal Carolina was able to beat Texas State on the road. They jumped to 9-0. They're 7-0 in the Sun Belt. Just big win for them. CJ Marable leading the way for Coastal Carolina with 157 yards on 16 carries and 3 touchdowns. And then last but not least, 23rd ranked Oklahoma State was able to beat Texas Tech 50-44. Also worth noting, but the Buffalo, the University of Buffalo, they went for they're 4-0. They were able to beat Kent State this weekend 70-41. Their running back Jared Patterson was able to finish with 409 yards on 36 carries. He ran the length of a football field 4 times, and he finished with 8 rushing touchdowns. Probably one of the greatest college football performances to date, and I think that was most definitely worth noting, as that was probably one play. I mean, I saw a lot of that game once he got to about 4 touchdowns and started watching that game, and this game was incredible. Great game for Jared Patterson, and he's had back-to-back really big games. I imagine this dude's gonna show out next game. Great game for him. Buffalo now 4-0. That is what's been going on with college football this weekend. And jumping to the NFL, following the 2 Thanksgiving matchups where the Texans beat the Lions and the Washington football team beat the Dallas Cowboys. Starting off down the line with the early games, starting with the Atlanta Falcons, my home team, they were able to beat the Las Vegas Raiders 43-6, and probably one of the biggest blowout upsets, shockers in the NFL this season. Atlanta just started from the beginning and just dominated till the very end. They kept Las Vegas' defense rushing attack to 40 total yards on the day. This Atlanta Falcons defense looked immaculate, and their offense was looking amazing as well. For the Las Vegas Raiders, their quarterback Derek Carr he threw for 215 yards. He threw an interception. Their leading rusher was Josh Jacobs, who had 27 yards on 7 carries. Their leading receiver was Hunter Renfrow, who had 73 yards on 7 receptions. And Derek Carr lost 3 fumbles. Josh Jacobs lost 4, as the Falcons were able to recover 4 as a team. But for their defense, Nicholas Morrow and Jeff Heath both led the team with 10 tackles each. Nick Kwiatkowski had 6 tackles, as he had the only sack of the day for the Raiders. And Jonathan Abram, their safety, finished with the only interception of the day. He had 1 interception. He returned it for about 5 yards. And he picked off Matt Ryan, the elite quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons, was able to complete 22 of his 39 passes, throwing for 185 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. On the ground, their leading rusher was Ito Smith, who had 65 yards and 12 carries and a touchdown, as their lead running back Todd Gurley was out. Their leading receiver was Calvin Ridley, who had 50 yards and 6 receptions and a touchdown. Brandon Powell was also able to log a receiving touchdown on the day. He only had 4 receiving yards in the game. On the defensive side of the ball, Jacob Tuoti Mariner and Steven Means both led the team with 6 tackles each. Going on down the list, Deion Jones was able to log 5 tackles, as he also finished with an interception and a touchdown. He had a 67-yard pick 6 to help the team go up. Also, Leroy Reynolds on the team finished with 1 tackle. He finished with a recovered fumble. Keanu Neal, the Falcons' young safety, he finished with 4 tackles, one of them being for loss. He finished with a recovered fumble. And then Jacob Tuoti Mariner, along with his 6 tackles, did finish with 2 recovered fumbles on the day to help this Atlanta Falcons defense soar. And with this win, the Atlanta Falcons are now 4-7 in the NFC South, as they are now 3rd in the NFC South. It looks like they're about 3 full games behind the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Las Vegas Raiders with this loss are now 6-5, as they're now 4 games behind the AFC West leading defending Super Bowl champs Kansas City Chiefs, who are sitting at 10-1. Continuing on down through these games, the Buffalo Bills were able to beat the Los Angeles Chargers at home 27-17. In this game, the Buffalo Bills were able to keep this game at arm's length. The Chargers made an attempt to come back, as they brought it to within a touchdown in the 4th quarter, but the Bills were able to keep it. They were able to keep it a buck, and able to beat them by 10. For the Los Angeles Chargers, their quarterback Justin Herbert with over 316 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. Their leading rusher was Austin Eckler, who had 44 yards on 14 carries. He also had 85 yards on 11 receptions. That would give him a total of 129 yards from scrimmage on the entire game. And also Keenan Allen had a receiving touchdown. He had 40 yards on 40 receptions for the Los Angeles Chargers. He had the only receiving touchdown of the day. Josh Kelly had the only rushing touchdown. He had 35 yards on 7 carries. On the defensive side of the ball, Rayshawn Jenkins finished the game with 11 total tackles on the day. He led the team. Joey Bosa, their young defensive end, finished with 8 tackles on the day, and he had 3 sacks. Amazing day. And he also recovered a fumble going on down the line. Nasir Adderley was able to finish with 4 tackles. He also recovered a fumble. And then Michael Davis would finish with 4 tackles as he ended up with an interception. Going back to Joey Bosa's 3 sacks, they were the only 3 sacks of the day for Los Angeles. And switching to Buffalo, their quarterback Josh Allen was able to throw for 157 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. And the wide receiver Cole Beasley went 1 for 1 as he threw a 20-yard touchdown, this one going to Gabriel Davis. On the ground, Devin Singletary finished with 82 yards on 11 carries. Josh Allen had 32 yards on the ground in addition to his 157 yards. That will give him 189 total yards in the game. He had a rushing touchdown of the day to give him 2 total touchdowns from scrimmage. In addition, Stephon Diggs, who came into this game as one of the league's leading receiving yards leaders. He had 39 yards on 7 receptions. And then on the defensive side of the ball, A.J. Klein led the team with 14 total tackles. He had 1.5 sacks, which also kind of led the team. Tre'Davious White finished with an interception as he also was able to log 8 interceptions. Tremaine Edmonds, their elite linebacker, finished with 11 tackles, and Jordan Poyer finished with 10. With this win, the Buffalo Bills are now officially sitting at the top of the AFC East with an 8-3 record, 1 full game ahead of the second-place Dolphins. And sitting at the bottom of the AFC West are the 3-8 Los Angeles Chargers following this loss. Jumping out to Boston, the New England Patriots were able to beat the Arizona Cardinals 20-17. This game went down to the wire. Cardinals made it close, but the Patriots were able to put it away with a last-second field goal to beat the Arizona Cardinals. Big game from both sides. For the Cardinals, their starting quarterback Kyler Murray would throw for 170 yards and a pick. He also ran for 31 yards on the ground as he finished with 201 total yards of offense. Kenyon Drake, their running back, finished with 78 yards and 22 carries and 2 touchdowns. He had the only 2 touchdowns of the game for the Arizona Cardinals. Their elite wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins finished the game with 55 yards on 5 receptions. And on the defensive side of the ball, Jordan Hicks finished with 7 tackles that led the entire team. Patrick Peterson, their elite corner, finished with 5 tackles on the day. They had a combined 3 sacks from Devondre Campbell, Isaiah Simmons, and Trayvon Coley. And then Dre Kirkpatrick was able to log an interception on the day as he finished with 3 tackles. And Marcus Golden was able to finish with 4 tackles as well as he finished with an interception for the Cardinals. For the New England Patriots, their elite quarterback Cam Newton would complete 9 of his 18 passes for 84 yards, and he threw 2 interceptions on the day. He also ran for 46 yards on the ground, and that would give him a total of, 130 total yards of offense. James White on the ground finished with 18 yards, but he also had the only 2 rushing touchdowns in the game for the New England Patriots. Through the air, Jacoby Myers, their leading receiver, he had 52 yards on 5 receptions. On the defensive side of the ball, Jajuan Bentley finished with 13 tackles on the day. And then Adam Butler finished with a sack as well. And Adrian Phillips was able to log an interception as he finished with 5 tackles. And their elite corner, Stephon Gilmore, logged 4 tackles, one of them being for loss. As the Patriots jump up to 5-6 with this win, they are now 3rd in the AFC East, 2 games behind the Miami Dolphins. And the Arizona Cardinals are also sitting in 3rd in their division as they are now 6-5. They are now a full game behind the Los Angeles Rams and a game and a half behind the Seattle Seahawks, who still have yet to play their game this week. Jumping out to New York, the Jets lost at home to the Miami Dolphins, and they still have yet to win a football game. They are now 0-11. Miami Dolphins were able to keep this game at arm's length for the entire game. For the New York Jets, their starting quarterback Sam Darnold would throw for 197 yards and 2 interceptions. On the ground, their future Hall of Fame running back Frank Gore finished with 74 yards and 18 carries. And through the air, Brashad Perriman finished with 79 yards on 4 receptions on the day to lead the team. On the defensive side of the ball, Harvey Lamb playing. He finished with 8 total tackles on the day as he was also able to recover a fumble. Neville Hewitt finished with 6 total tackles. He finished with a sack, and he was also able to recover a fumble for the Jets. Great defensive performance from the Jets. They held this Dolphins team to 20 points, but their offense wasn't able to get anything going. For the Miami Dolphins, their starting quarterback, Ryan Fitzpatrick, was able to throw for 257 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then through the air, their leading receiver was Devontae Parker, who had 119 yards on 8 receptions on the day. Mike Gesicki would finish with a receiving touchdown. He had 35 yards and 2 receptions. And then Adam Shaheen would have only 1 reception for 7 yards. That would be a touchdown of the day. On the defensive side of the ball, they're Jerome Baker, Emmanuel Ogbah, Nick Needham, Kyle Van Noy, Raekwon Davis, and Elandon Roberts each led the team with 5 tackles each, as the team combined for a total of 3 sacks on the day. Xavier Howard was able to log an interception to go with his 3 tackles on the day. And then Nick Needham, going on with his 5 tackles, was able to finish with an interception as well. As the Dolphins jump up to 7-4 with this win, and the Jets drop to 0-11. Looking at the AFC East, the Miami Dolphins are now second in that division behind the Buffalo Bills by a game. And the New York Jets are now 5 games behind the third place New England Patriots. They are now 0-11 this far this season. They still have yet to win a game. And speaking of the other New York team, the New York Giants went to Cincinnati and were able to win their 4th game of the season, beating the Bengals 19-17. This game came down to the wire as the Giants were able to go up 19-10. T. Higgins' touchdown for the Bengals was able to bring it able to bring it to within 2, but the Giants were still able to run away with this win. It was a much needed win considering how close their division is. But starting with the Cincinnati Bengals, their starting quarterback Brandon Allen would throw for 136 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. Their leading receiver through the air was T. Higgins, who finished with 44 yards on 5 receptions and a touchdown. And their elite receiver AJ Green finished with no receptions on the day as he was targeted 3 times. On the defensive side of the ball, Von Bell was able to lead the team with 10 tackles, and he also recovered a fumble as well. And that's pretty much what was going on for the Bengals. Not much going on for them. For the New York Giants, their starting quarterback Daniel Jones was throwing for 213 yards before he got injured and taken out with a hamstring injury. Colt McCoy came in and threw for 31 yards, and he went 6 for 10 as he played his snaps. Wayne Gallman was the Giants' leading rusher as he finished with 94 yards on 24 carries and a touchdown. Through the air, Evan Ingram finished with 129 yards on 6 receptions for the team. And on the defensive side of the ball, Jabril Peppers and Logan Ryan would each lead the team with 6 tackles. Logan Ryan also recovered a fumble. And then it looks as though Nico Lelos, he finished with a recovered fumble, even though he didn't even register a tackle. And then also Leonard Williams finished with 2 tackles, one of them being a sack, and he also recovered a fumble. With this win, the New York Giants are now 4-7 in the NFC East. And with this win, they now take a lead over the second place 4-7 Washington football team after their Thanksgiving win. And with this loss, the Cincinnati Bengals at 2-8-1 are sitting at the bottom of the AFC North following this loss. Jumping to Indianapolis, the Indianapolis Colts hosted the Tennessee Titans. They both came in with a 7-3 record, and the Tennessee Titans were able to beat the Colts 45-26 after a really dominating first half, especially from Derrick Henry. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Starting with the Indianapolis Colts, their starting quarterback Phillip Rivers threw for 295 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. And on the ground, Jacoby Brissett was able to run for 3 yards on 4 carries, but he had 2 touchdowns for the Colts on the ground. Through the air, T.Y. Hilton was their leading receiver with 81 yards and 4 receptions and a touchdown. Trey Burton finished with 42 yards and 3 receptions and a touchdown of his own. On the defensive side of the ball, their elite linebacker Darius Leonard finished with 14 tackles and a sack on the day. Big game for him as he had the only sack of the game, and he was really the only really big defender doing a lot for Indianapolis Colts from beginning to end. For the Tennessee Titans, their starting quarterback, Ryan Tannehill, would throw for 221 yards and a touchdown to A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown would get 98 yards and 4 receptions with that touchdown. On the ground, their elite running back, Derrick Henry, would finish with 178 yards on 27 carries and 3 touchdowns as he had 140 yards in the first half. On the defensive side of the ball, Kenny Vaccaro finished with 9 total tackles on the day. And Breon Borders was able to log the only interception of the game as he also had 2 tackles under his belt. With this win, the Tennessee Titans now lead the AFC South with an 8-3 record, and 1 game behind them are the Indianapolis Colts sitting at 7-4. Especially a big win considering the Titans were able to get this win on the road, and the Titans are in really good position to finish with the best record in this division. Jumping out to Jacksonville, the Jaguars hosted the Cleveland Browns and lost by 2. This is a very close game as the Jaguars picked up their 10th loss of the season. The Jaguars were able to make it a 2-point game as they failed the 2-point conversion to try to tie this game up. Big defensive play with the Cleveland Browns to make sure they were able to secure their 8th win. For the Jaguars, their starting quarterback was Mike Glennon, who completed 20 of his 35 passes for 2 touchdowns, and on the ground, James Robinson finished with 128 yards and 22 carries and a touchdown. He also had 31 yards through the air to give him 159 total yards of offense. Colin Johnson was their leading receiver. He had 96 yards on 4 receptions and a touchdown, and Tyler Eifert had the other receiving touchdown. He had 16 yards on 3 receptions with that touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Miles Jack out of UCLA was able to lead the team with 9 total tackles on the day, one of them being for loss. Andrew Wingard finished with 3 tackles as he recovered a fumble for the Jacksonville Jaguars. For the Cleveland Browns, their quarterback Baker Mayfield would complete 19 of his 29 passes, throwing for 258 yards and 2 touchdowns. On the ground, their leading rusher was Nick Chubb, who had 144 yards on 19 carries and a touchdown. Jarvis Landry led the Browns through the air. He had 143 yards on 8 receptions and a touchdown as their elite receiver Odell Beckham Jr. was injured. Or he was out for the game. And then Harrison Bryant, he was the only person to lose a fumble. But continuing on the defensive side of the ball for the Cleveland Browns, Terrence Mitchell and B.J. Goodson led the team with 6 tackles each. And with this win, the Cleveland Browns are now 8-3, sitting second in the AFC North, behind the 10-0 Pittsburgh Steelers. And they are now a good distance between them and the 6-4 Baltimore Ravens. And with this loss, the Jacksonville Jaguars are 1-10. They are 3 games behind the 3rd place Houston Texans, and they're now sitting at the very bottom of the AFC South, 1 game out from getting the top pick on the draft behind the New York Jets. But at least the Jaguars have won a football game this year. Continuing on, jumping to Minneapolis, the Minnesota Vikings were able to beat the Carolina Panthers 28-27. This game was another one that went down to the wire. The Panthers were leading by a bit going into the final quarter. They were up 21-10 at the end of the 3rd, and the Vikings were able to completely come back and beat them, scoring 18 points in the 4th quarter to secure their 5th win of the season. For the Panthers, their quarterback Teddy Bridgewater with over 276 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. He also ran for 12 yards, which gave him 279 total yards from scrimmage for the day. Their leading rusher was Mike Davis, who had 55 yards and 15 carries, and their leading receiver through the air was Robbie Anderson, who had 94 yards and 4 receptions and a touchdown. On the ground, Jeremy Chin was able to finish with 13 total tackles. He also recovered 2 fumbles on the day for the Panthers. And Myles Hartford was also able to recover a fumble for the team as well. Jumping out to the Minnesota Vikings, their starting quarterback Kirk Cousins with over 307 yards and 3 touchdowns. Their leading rusher Dalvin Cook would finish with 61 yards on 18 carries, as I think Derrick Henry was able to make his lead even bigger between him and Dalvin Cook in terms of rushing yards on the season. B.C. Johnson led the team in receiving yards. He had 74 yards and 7 receptions. And Justin Jefferson had 70 yards on 7 receptions and 2 touchdowns. Chad Beebe also had 63 yards and 7 receptions with a touchdown. Kyle Rudolph had 68 yards and 7 receptions. That was 3 receivers for the Minnesota Vikings who had at least 60 yards on the day. Good job for Kirk Cousins for spreading the ball out. On the defensive side of the ball, Eric Kendricks led the team in tackles. He had 12 of them. Anthony Harris had 11 tackles as they were unable to get a sack on the day. In addition to his 12 tackles on the day, Eric Kendricks was also able to finish with an interception. Big win for him for the Vikings as a team, as they are now 5-6 on the season, as they are now 3 games behind the Green Bay Packers, and they have the same record as the Chicago Bears. They are 2nd in the NFC North. With this loss, the Carolina Panthers now drop below the Atlanta Falcons with the worst record in the NFC South. They are now 4-8 on the season, as I believe they are approaching their bye week. Continuing on, jumping out to Denver, the Denver Broncos, who didn't have a starting quarterback play for them all game, lost 31-3 to the New Orleans Saints. As you know, everyone was aware. All the Denver Broncos quarterbacks were out due to COVID, so they had to Kendall Hinton, their quarterback from their practice squad, who I think was a receiver, who came in, and not much offense going on for the Broncos. Kendall Hinton, he completed one of his 9 pass attempts, throwing for 13 yards and 2 picks. He also ran for 7 yards. He gave him 20 total yards of offense. Royce Freeman was their leading rusher. He had 50 yards on 8 carries. Noah Fant had the only reception for the Broncos. It was a 13-yarder. On the defensive side of the ball, Draymond Jones finished with 9 total tackles on the day. As he led the team. DeMarcus Walker had 2 sacks on the day as he had 3 tackles. And then continuing on, not much really going on with the Denver Broncos defense as Esang Basi finished with an interception to go along with his 2 tackles. For the New Orleans Saints, their starting quarterback Taysom Hill would throw for 78 yards, and he would also run for 44. That would give him a total of 122 total yards of offense to go along with his 2 rushing touchdowns. Latavius Murray was their leading rusher. He had 124 yards on 19 carries with his 2 touchdowns. Between Taysom Hill and Latavius Murray, they had all 4 of the touchdowns for the team. Michael Thomas, their elite wide receiver, led the team with 50 total yards, with 50 receiving yards and 4 receptions. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Demario Davis led the team with 9 total tackles. Quan Alexander would finish with 3 tackles as he recovered a fumble. Janoris Jenkins finished with an interception on the day. Same with C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Gardner-Johnson was able to finish with 1 total tackle on the day. Janoris Jenkins didn't have a single tackle, but the interception was enough. With this win, the New Orleans Saints are now 9-2, sitting at the top of the NFC South. And with this loss, the Denver Broncos are now 4-7, sitting at 3rd in the AFC West, 2 games behind the Las Vegas Raiders with this loss. Continuing on, jumping to Los Angeles, the Rams faced the San Francisco 49ers at home, and they lost 23-20. This was another game that went down to the last play. Robbie Gould knocking the field goal through the uprights to get this big win against the team going into this game was leading the NFC West. Looking at how both teams fared for the Los Angeles Rams, their starting quarterback, Jared Goff, would throw for 198 yards and 2 interceptions. On the ground, Cam Akers would finish with 84 yards on 9 carries and a touchdown. He was the only bright spot on their offense, really, on the just through the air. Robert Woods finished with 80 yards on 7 receptions as he led the team. And continuing on, Troy Reeder on the defensive side of the ball finished with 15 total tackles. Aaron Donald, their goated defensive tackle, finished with 5 tackles of the day, one of them being a sack. He also had another tackle for loss. And Jordan Fuller finished with another interception as he also logged 4 tackles on the day. For the San Francisco 49ers, their starting quarterback Nick Mullen threw for 252 yards and a pick. On the ground, their running back Raheem Mostert finished with 43 yards on 16 carries and a touchdown. Deebo Samuel was their leading receiver. He had 133 yards on 11 receptions. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Kerry Hyder Jr. and Kevin Givens were able to record fumble recoveries. Richard Sherman and Dre Greenlaw led the team with 7 tackles each. Just a big defensive performance all around the board for the San Francisco 49ers. Javon Kinlaw, in addition to his 2 tackles on the day, he finished with a pick 6, a 27-yard pick 6. And Richard Sherman, in addition to leading the team with 7 tackles, he had a pick as well. With this win, the San Francisco 49ers, like I said, are now 5-6, sitting at the bottom of the NFC West, a game behind the 6-5 Arizona Cardinals. And now with this loss, the Los Angeles Rams drop half a game behind the Seattle Seahawks. If the Seahawks win, the Seahawks can take the lead of the lead in the NFC West. Jumping out to Tampa Bay, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers hosted the reigning 2020 Super Bowl champs, the Kansas City Chiefs. This game went down to the wire as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers made an effort to come back, but the Chiefs were able to keep this game at arm's length and get their 10th win of the season. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their goated quarterback Tom Brady would complete 27 of his 41 passes, throwing for 345 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 picks. On the ground, Ronald Jones II finished with 66 yards on 9 carries as he led the team in rushing. Through the air, their leading receiver was Rob Gronkowski, the future tight end, or future Hall of Fame tight end. He had 106 yards on 6 receptions. Mike Evans, their elite wide receiver, would finish with 50 yards on 3 receptions and 2 touchdowns. Chris Godwin had 97 yards on 8 receptions. And then Ronald Jones II, in addition to his 66 yards, he had 37 yards through the air and a touchdown, which would give him a total of, what would that be, 103 yards of total offense to go with his 1 touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Devin White led the team with 12 total tackles. He led it with 12 tackles. Jason Pierre-Paul had a sack on the day. Same with Shaq Barrett. William Goulston would finish with a recovered fumble for the team. For the Kansas City Chiefs, their elite quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, would complete 37 of his 49 passes, throwing for 462 yards and 3 touchdowns. On the ground, Clyde Edwards-Helaire would lead the team with 37 tackles. And in addition to his amazing performance through the air, Patrick Mahomes had 28 yards on 4 carries. That would give him a total of 490 yards of offense. Tyreek Hill was their leading receiver. Their elite wide receiver finished with 269 yards on 13 receptions and 3 touchdowns. Amazing game, overall performance for him. Also, their elite tight end, Travis Kelce, would finish with 82 yards on 8 receptions. Big game from the Kansas City Chiefs offense. On the defensive side of the ball, Daniel Sorensen and Anthony Hitchens both led the team with 7 tackles each. Tyrann Mathieu finished with 5 tackles of his own. And through the air, Tyrann Mathieu finished with an interception of his own. Also, Brashad Breeland, in addition to his only tackle, he finished with an interception as well. With this win, the Kansas City Chiefs are 10-1, sitting at the top of the AFC West, 4 games ahead of the Las Vegas Raiders. They are 1 game away from clinching the division. And in the NFC South, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are now 7-5, 3 games ahead of the Atlanta Falcons and 2 games behind the NFC South leading New Orleans Saints without Drew Brees. And jumping to Green Bay for last night's Sunday Night Football performance, the Green Bay Packers were able to beat the Chicago Bears, their division rivals, 41-25. As they scored all 41 of their points in the first 3 quarters. They were up 41-10. The Bears scored 15 points really in garbage time to make it closer than it really was. For the Chicago Bears, their starting quarterback Mitch Trubisky would throw for 242 yards with 3 touchdowns and 2 picks. He had 11 yards on the ground to give them 253 total yards of offense. Also, their leading rusher on the ground was David Montgomery, who had 103 yards and 11 carries. He also had 40 yards through the air to give him 143 yards of offense with his 1 receiving touchdown. That's also Allen Robinson II finished with 74 yards on 8 receptions with 2 touchdowns on the day. Also on the defensive side of the ball, Buster Skrine finished with 13 tackles of his own. Danny Trevathan finished with 10 tackles of his own. Both of these players finished with 10 tackles of their own. And just looking at how the Green Bay Packers fared, their go-to quarterback Aaron Rodgers would complete 21 of his 29 passes for 4 touchdowns on the day. Aaron Jones would be their leading rusher. He had 90 yards on 17 carries. And through the air, Robert Tonyan would be their leading receiver. He had 67 yards and 5 receptions and a touchdown. Devontae Adams had 61 yards and 6 receptions with his touchdown. And Alan Lazard would finish with 23 yards and 4 receptions as he had a touchdown as well. Aaron Rodgers spreading the love, spreading the wealth. Adrian Amos and Raven Green both led the team with 7 tackles each. Preston Smith, in addition to recovering a fumble, would finish with 3 tackles and a sack. Kamal Martin would finish with a sack as well. Same with Zadarius Smith. Big game overall from the Green Bay Packers as Darnell Savage finished with 2 interceptions of his own. Big game all around for the Green Bay Packers. With this win, they are now 8-3. Sitting at the top of the NFC North. And with this loss, the Chicago Bears dropped from 2nd to 3rd in the NFC North as the Minnesota Vikings passed them up. And they are still 1 game ahead of the Detroit Lions. So that's what these games are looking like. And last but not least, going into tonight's, looking forward to the remaining football games for this week and the 12th week of the NFL. The Seattle Seahawks will go to Philly to play against the Eagles on ESPN. With a win here, the Seahawks will take the lead in the NFC West, and with the win here, the Eagles could take the lead in the NFC East here. This game is going to be on ESPN, and then on Tuesday, the Baltimore Ravens are going to face off against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That game got postponed because of coronavirus concerns. The Steelers are still undefeated, looking to get their 11th win of the season to jump 1 game ahead of the Kansas City Chiefs once more. With that said, I'm going to jump into soccer to finish out the week. Starting with the Premier League in the UK, Liverpool was able to tie with Brighton and Hove on Saturday. Jota he scored the only goal for Liverpool, and Gross scored the penalty kick from Brighton and Hove to tie the game. With this tie, Liverpool still tied at the top of the league with Tottenham Hotspur. Continuing on, Man City was able to beat Burnley 5-0. Mahrez finishing with the hat trick from Manchester City as Ferran Torres and Mandi were able to score the other 2 goals. Much as they got Man City the much needed points that they needed. Man City is sitting 10th in the Premier League table. They have 15 points through 9 matches. They have 4 wins, 3 losses, and 3 draws and 2 losses so far in the Premier League. And then jumping to Sunday's matchup in this very same league. Manchester City was able to beat Southampton 3-2. Bruno Fernandes was able to score a goal in the 60th minute as Edison Cavani, their Manchester United's newest big player, their newest star. And Cavani he got the assist from that. He was able to score 2 goals in the 74th minute and the 92nd minute to go above and beyond to come back from Southampton, because Southampton scored their 2 goals in the first half, and the 3 goals from Manchester United would help Man U go over above and beyond, as it looks like Edison Cavani might be Manchester United's super sub of the year. Man U is sitting 8th in the Premier League table. They have 5 wins, a draw, and 3 losses so far in the Premier League. They have 16 points in the table. As a lot of these teams are packed really closely together, but as of now, Man U is sitting 8th. Chelsea was also able to draw with Tottenham. Neither team was able to score a goal. Great defensive performances from both sides, I might add. I watched this game. Tottenham Hotspur, with this draw, they're still sitting at the very top of the Premier League with 21 points, tied with Liverpool. And Chelsea is 3rd with 19 points in the table, 2 points behind both Tottenham and Chelsea. And also, Arsenal lost to Wolverhampton. Gabriel scored the only goal for Arsenal, and Neto and Podence. The 2 goals for Wolverhampton is Arsenal I don't think they played that well. I'll say it straight up. But a big win for Wolverhampton. Jumping to the Bundesliga, the reigning Bundesliga champs, Bayern Munich, were able to beat VfB Stuttgart after originally going down 1-0. It will be goals from Kingsley Coman, their elite striker Robert Lewandowski, and then their winger Douglas Costa, who was originally on the team through the mid-2010s, who rejoined the team, as that was his first goal back after being with Bayern Munich. And looking out to the second place team, or the team who was second going into this weekend, Borussia Dortmund lost 2-1 to FC Köln. Shaqiri was able to score both goals for Köln. He took the first, as he was able to help Cologne go up 2-0, at least through the first 60 minutes. And then Thorgan Hazard scored the only goal for Borussia Dortmund. With this loss, Dortmund now drops to 4th in the Bundesliga, as they trail Bayern Munich by 4 points. RB Leipzig is now 2 points behind Bayern Munich following their win against Arminia Bielefeld. And that's what's going on pretty much in the Bundesliga. Continuing on, jumping to Italian Serie A, Inter Milan was able to beat Sassuolo 3-0. Sanchez was able to score the first one. Sassuolo was able to score. Sassuolo had an own goal in the 14th minute, and Gagliardini was able to score in the 60th minute to help put Inter over the top versus Sassuolo. Inter Milan currently sits 2nd in the Serie A table behind their their cross-city rivals AC Milan, trailing them by about 5 points. Juventus drew with Benevento 1-1 as Morata scored the only goal for Juventus. He picked up a red card in extra time. And Letitia, he scored the only goal for Benevento to end the first half. And neither team scored in the second half. With this draw, Juventus sits 4th in the Serie A, trailing Sassuolo by a point. Juventus hasn't lost a match, but they have 4 wins and 5 draws so far this season. That's why they're trailing AC Milan by 6 points so far through 9 matches played. That's what Serie A is kind of looking like. But jumping into Sunday, speaking of AC Milan, just to show you how AC Milan is currently doing. They beat Fiorentina 2-0. Romagnoli and Kessi's penalty kick were able to put them up 2-0. Lazio lost 3-1 to Udinese as Ciro Immobile was able to score their only goal of the game, only goal of the performance. Lazio currently sitting 9th in Serie A. Also, Napoli beating AS Roma 4-0. Insigne, Ruiz, Mertens, and Politano scoring all 4 goals for Napoli to help them get their 4 points in the table. They now sit 5th in the Serie A table really quick. Jumping to Spain, looking at La Liga, Atletico Madrid was able to beat Valencia 1-0. Lato's own goal for Valencia would give Atletico Madrid the win, and with this win, Atletico Madrid currently trail Real Sociedad by 1 point with two less matches played in Premier or in La Liga, as they still have they have 2 games to play. I think they're still the better team, but right now they're second in the table, and Real Madrid picked up a loss to Alaves. Alaves Perez scored a penalty kick in the 5th minute, and Joselu helped the Alaves go up 2-0. Casemiro's 86-minute goal gave Real Madrid hope, but they ended up losing that one. Real Madrid's currently sitting 4th in La Liga with 17 points, which is 7 points behind Real Sociedad for the very moment. And then jumping out to Sunday's La Liga matchups, as looking out to how Barca did. Barca was able to beat Osasuna 4-0. Braithwaite was able to score a goal in the 29th minute, as he's looking to be a solid striker for Barcelona. Antoine Griezmann, Barcelona's elite forward, was able to score the second goal in the 42nd minute, followed by Philippe Coutinho's 57th minute goal, and Lionel Messi, the Barcelona's GOAT, his goal in the 73rd minute to help Barcelona go up. And with this win, Barcelona currently sits 7th in La Liga after being as low as 12th, I believe, last week. They now have 14 points in the table after a much needed win, and now they're very much back in the hunt for La Liga. And last but not least, jumping to France's Ligue 1. The reigning French champs, PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, drew with Bordeaux 2-2, as Neymar's penalty kick and Moises Kean's immediate goal right after helped put PSG up 2-1, and then Adeli's goal by Bordeaux would tie the game, and then not much would happen after that. With this draw, though, PSG is still sitting at the top of Ligue 1 by 2 points in the table over Lille. As 4 teams are currently 2 points behind PSG, I think one more draw or a loss could see them possibly falling at the top of Ligue 1, but as of right now, they're sitting at the very top. But with that said, that's everything that's been going on this weekend. It was a very action-packed weekend, including college basketball, college football, an amazing fight weekend. Jake Paul still knocked out Nate Robinson, I won't forget that. Pro football from the NFL, and of course, there was soccer going on in the top 5 leagues. And there's a lot of football to go, and there's a lot of soccer going on with Champions League this week. I will come back tomorrow regarding tonight's Monday Night Football, and I'll continue going on this week. But with that said, today is Monday, November 30th, 2020, out here in this quarantine. I appreciate you for listening to all 46 minutes of this piece, and with that said, I hope all is well. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace out.